So these are the topics we are going to cover. So first we are going to see how JavaBean is used as a software component model, and we'll actually learn what a component means in Java programming, and we will go over some of the core concepts of JavaBeans. We'll talk about the properties, and we'll talk about introspection, and we'll talk about event model, and we'll also talk about how bean can be persisted, and also how bean persistency could be in a form of XML file. Okay, so JavaBean as a software component model. So when people say software component, what do you mean by that? Okay, so you can think of software component as a self-contained reusable software unit. So the easiest way to understand software component is a Lego block. So when you're trying to build something using Lego blocks, basically you got a set of Lego blocks and you basically assemble it, right? Okay. The vision for software development is actually same thing. We want to be able to build our software by just assembling existing software components. Okay, so that is the idea of component model based software development. Okay. From the Java perspective, software components can be categorized into two. One could be a visual component. The other one could be non-visual component. Okay, so visual software components could be something like a button or text view. Okay, so by using UI Builder tool, so here we are going to, in our exercise, in our hands-on lab exercise, we are going to use NetBeans. NetBeans is considered as a UI Builder tool. Basically, you can drag and drop the button component or text view component to build your application. Okay, so these components could be dragged and dropped into the palette in this UI Builder tool to build the UI of your application. Okay, and you can see immediately the results of your work. For example, you can see the color, and you can change the color. Once you change the color property of that component, visual component, then that should be reflected right away in your UI Builder tool. Okay. If you don't understand what I'm talking about here, that's perfectly fine. When we do the hands-on lab exercise, you will definitely understand what I mean. Okay. Now, software components could be non-visual component as well. So these non-visual software components could actually capture business logic or state. So that could be like a product or a customer or a student or whatever. Okay. So what is a JavaBean? So JavaBean is basically Java version of the software component. So it's a portable, platform-independent component model written in Java programming language. So once you have a JavaBean, that JavaBean should be able to be used in any platform, whether that is the Windows or Mac OS or Linux, as long as they have a Java virtual machine. Okay. And with the JavaBeans API, you can create reusable platform-independent components. Okay, so again, this component could be visual or non-visual. Okay, so in our exercise, we are going to deal with the visual JavaBeans component. Okay, all right. So JavaBeans, non-visual ones, are the basis of what is called a POJO-based programming model. So POJO, I'm not sure whether you have heard this term. POJO stands for plain old Java object-based programming model. Okay, by building your application based on POJO-based programming model, basically you can take advantage of all the OOP, object-oriented programming models, such as encapsulation, inheritance, and the polymorphism in your application. Whether that application is standalone Java SE application or enterprise application. If you don't understand this particular bullet item, POJO, don't worry about it. I mean, it's not that much important to understand JavaBean for now. So JavaBean is a continuation of understanding what a JavaBean is. So JavaBean components are sometimes called the beans. Okay, so you can call beans, and that means JavaBean. Alright, so you can use the UI Builder tool. So UI Builder tool has a design mode. In design mode, you can actually drag and drop this UI component, and you can also see the source mode. Basically, when you drag and drop this UI component, it actually generates the source code underneath. Okay, but in design mode, you can actually see the visual aspects of those components. Okay, you can actually see, for example, like a property sheet of the bean. To see what is the property values of those particular components. For example, text button. You could actually see the color of it, background color of it, the text itself, and things like that. Okay, so you can actually use this property sheet, or what is called the bean customizer, to customize the bean and then save that bean. So bean is basically an object. Okay, and object could be what is called the serialized. Later on we are going to learn serialization. An object can be serialized, meaning object can be created in a form of a file, and that file could be later on read, and then you can actually recreate an object, in this case JavaBean. Okay. Beans are also dynamic in the sense that properties can be changed during runtime through business logic. So you can actually use a business logic, based on time of the day, based on, whatever. You can change the value of the property, right? And that property could be actually reflected right away for, for example, like a non-visual component. Yeah, the thing, I understand that, these things are somewhat too abstract for you guys, right? So that's perfectly fine. Yeah, so the goal of this presentation is to just go over the concept of JavaBeans, and when we do the hands-on lab, I'm going to actually revisit these concepts again, so you'll have a better understanding once you start doing a hands-on lab exercise. Okay, core concepts of JavaBean. So UI Builder tool and introspection. So the concept introspection is in fact very important, and so UI Builder tool can discover the bean's features, meaning it can find out what properties a bean has, what methods it has, and what events it has by a process called introspection. Okay, so by using introspection, Java runtime system can find out what properties that bean has, and what methods it has, and what events it has. I'm going to explain events later on, okay? What event model it has, okay? Now, the bean has to follow some design patterns, okay? So one of the design pattern is like a getter and setter method that we talked about. So if a bean, so for now you can think of bean is just like a special object, okay? So by looking at the methods, first of all, by using introspection, you can find out all the methods that the bean has. Now, if it finds that there is a getter method, okay, like a get color, then it figures there is in fact a color property. Okay, so you can, the UI Builder tool can actually read the color property by calling get color. If it finds that there is a set color method, then it also figures it can change the value. Okay, because it can call the set color method to change the value of it. Okay, so in other words, UI Builder tool can figure out a bean has color property. It finds the object has get color method through introspection. Okay, so by using introspection, it can find out all the methods, and by looking through all the methods, if it finds a get color method, then it knows that there is a property called the color. Okay, and if it also has a set color method, it knows that it can also change the color value. Okay, so that's basically this set color is all about. Okay, properties of a bean. So properties represent characteristics of a bean, such as a color. Okay, so it could be visual characteristics such as a color of a button bean, or it could be non-visual such as a balance of savings account bean. Okay. So as I mentioned in the previous slide, beans expose properties through this accessor method, meaning getter method and setter method. Okay, So this is the reason I said, when we actually go over these methods, the accessor method, why this having accessor method for a bean is actually important. Okay. In fact, when an object has a getter method and setter method, and is considered as a bean. Okay. So bean is basically an object that has the getter and setter method. Basically, well, you don't have to have a setter method. You could have, getter method or setter method, or a combination of those two. So UI Builder tools can introspect the bean to discover its properties and expose those properties for manipulation. So, basically you should be able to use this UI Builder tool to change the value, okay, of the change the color of a bean, the button bean or text bean and things like that. So underneath it's going to call getter method or setter method. Getter method to read the value, setter method to set the value. Let's see. I'm going to. Okay, so yeah, let's actually go over these things first. Okay, yeah. So the another thing is events. Beans use events to communicate with other beans. Okay, so for example, if you have a button bean, if a user click the bean, then button clicked event will fire an event, and there are the event listener or event handler or event receiver bean. So these are all same thing. Okay, so different terminology. So there could be another bean that receive the events and handle it. Okay, so this event receiver should register with the source of the source bean, meaning the event source bean. By the way, event source bean means the bean that fires event. So the event, the receiver the bean. Let me actually repeat. The event listener bean has to register of his interest of getting events from to the event source. Again, we'll actually talk about these things later on in detail using code. Okay. Now, UI Builder tool can examine a bean and determine which events a bean can fire and which it can handle. So it can figure out whether it is in fact event source bean or event listener bean. Okay. So the button bean, if it has in fact some methods, it can figures out that button bean is the event source bean, or button bean is event handler bean. And a bean could be both event source bean or event receiver bean. Okay. All right. So if you don't understand what I'm talking about here, don't worry about it. Persistence enables beans to save and restore their state. Okay, so when we say the state, we're talking about the values of the properties or fields. Okay, so properties and fields, are the same terminology. So after changing value of a property, you can save the state of the bean, and then you can save the state of the bean in a file, and then you can restore the bean later time. Okay, so this is called what is the serialization and deserialization, and this could be actually one of the topics that it is actually covered in advanced Java programming, but we might actually cover, if you have time, we'll actually cover this in this code camp. Okay, so JavaBeans method is no different from regular Java method. So it's just regular beans. Okay, but can be called from other beans on a scripting environment. By default, all public methods are exported. Okay, so examples of beans. Example beans. So as I said before, visual beans could be a button, slider, text editor, text edit GUI component or drop-down component and things like that. Non-visual beans could be savings account, the spelling checker account, spelling checker bean, and things like that. Okay, so you can think of any Java classes that has a getter and setter methods are considered as a Java beans. There are a couple of other things, but this is pretty much all there is to it. So this is the button bean. So you could have in fact a different button beans, and this is a slider bean. Okay. All right, good. So I'm actually waiting for this exercise so that I can explain these things better by actually doing the lab. Okay, so let's open JavaBeans hands-on lab documentation. So we are going to do exercise 1. Okay, so here you are going to in fact see an example where JavaBean, in this case we are dealing with a visual JavaBean to be manipulated from the UI builder tool. In this case we are using NetBeans as a UI builder tool. Okay, so you can use pretty much all the IDs, and all the IDs support this this UI builder functionality. So it's not just NetBeans. Okay. So first we are going to create a new project. So let's create new project. Okay, so you guys, if you want, you can just follow along with me. Okay, I'll give you some time to play around it as well after I do the demonstration. So I'm going to call it as a beans example. Okay. And yeah, we're gonna just use a default. Okay, and finish. Okay, now we are going to create a new class called the SimpleBean JLabel. So this is going to be a label bean. So so you can select this package here. And new Java class, and we are going to so it doesn't actually use this package, but yeah, so it doesn't really matter, so we can use the packaging. That's fine. So we are going to actually name it as a SimpleBean JLabel and finish. And then we are going to change the code. Okay, so I'm going to just copy the whole thing here. Now, the thing you can see this is a visual bean is because you can see it's actually extending JLabel. JLabel is the visual component. Okay, so by extending JLabel, it's actually becoming itself. It's actually you can tell this is the visual component. So this label will have the text value is going to be the text. So if you take a look at the JLabel source code, you will actually see it does have a set text, set opaque, set background, basically a bunch of the setter method and getter method. So let's take a look at the JLabel. So you can actually take a look at the Java documentation of JLabel. So you can see it should have getter and setter method. Okay, so like so basically it has a bunch of getter method. Okay, so you can see like a text. It should have a get text method, and then you should have a set text method. Okay, set text. So we have a getter and setter method for text property. Means the text is a private field, but by having getter and setter method, the UI builder tool will be able to figure out, I should be able to actually set the text or read the text. Okay. All right. So we created this bean. Okay, so this is a simple visual bean. Okay, implement serializable means that basically this object can be saved into a file. Okay. Okay, so that's what we did, and then we're gonna create the another one. So this time we are creating SimpleBean JLabel 2, which extends SimpleBean JLabel. Okay, so basically this is the child class of this. Okay, so we are going to create the second bean. And we are going to copy this code. Okay, so by extending SimpleBean JLabel, I mean this is also the JLabel component, right? Because it extends this one, and this extends the JLabel. Okay, this one has its own property called the label type. Okay, so it does have a getter and setter method. Okay, all right, we save all these changes for now. now we are going to build the project. So what we want to do is we want to actually create a jar file that contains these two JavaBeans. Okay. So what we are going to do is, we are going to call build, clean and build, or build, and it's going to just create a jar file. So we were able to create a jar file in our previous exercise, like a jar and CVF, and then you provide the directory and then /star.class, right? That's basically what it does. Okay. So once it creates the jar file, it should actually give us the location where that jar file is located. Okay. Why is not clean build? Oh, actually, I'm looking at the wrong place. So you have to select this one. Okay. So the this jar file has been created. Okay. So let me just do the clean build. Okay, so the jar file is created in this directory. Okay, all right. Okay, now we are going to, we can actually go to this directory. So in my case, it's going to be my project, and so let me just go to this directory and just make sure. I mean, this is optional step. Okay, I can go to that directory. And you can see jar file has been created, so and you can certainly find out what it contains. So beans example.jar file. What we want to do is make sure is that it actually contains simple bean JLabel and simple bean JLabel 2 class. Okay, so these are the beans that I want to be included in this jar file. Okay. You can also actually verify that from the, so NetBeans has what is called the files view. So files view, you can go to distribution. This is the jar file, and you can actually inspect the internals of the jar file from the files view. So you can see it contains these two beans that we have created. Okay. All right, now we are going to add to the builder tool. So we are going to now create another project. Okay, beans user example. So yes, so we are going to create another project, Java project, and we are going to name it as beans user example. And just you can use the main class like this, or you can change to beans user example. It doesn't matter. So I'm gonna just use the default. Okay. And now we are going to create the new JFrame form. So we are actually building GUI application. So right click it, new, and a new JFrame form. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to give a name. So I'm going to call it my form. You can choose whatever name of your choice. My form. And package could be my package. Doesn't matter. And finish. Okay. And now you're going to see design mode. So when you're actually creating, so this is the design mode of what I was talking about. Okay, so you can see the source code. Okay, you can see my form is extending the swing JFrame. Okay, and you can see the design mode. Okay, now when you're actually looking at the design mode, there are in fact the bunch of components that you can actually drag and drop. Okay, so you can actually drag and drop like this label, like this. Okay, and then you can see the properties. You can change the properties, like I can change the property of this one to some colors like this. Okay, and it's being changed. And you can take a look at the source code. Okay, so every time you make a change, the source code is in fact changed as well. Okay, all right. So what we want to do is now we want to actually add the beans that we have created. Okay, so these are the beans that are already provided for you, but we want to actually use our two beans, simple label beans that we have created, right? So what you can do is we are going to add those two beans in this swing container. So here what you're going to do is we're going to actually open the palette manager. Okay, so open the palette manager, and then we are going to add from jar file, and then we are going to actually select the beans example jar file that we have created. Okay, so the swing component here, the palette manager, and then we are going to add the add from jar file, and we are going to go to that directory that we have created, that jar file. So that is, in my case, it's C directory is my project, and it's bean example and distribution, and this is the jar file. Okay, so we want to add this one, and basically we want to add just these two. Okay, all right, and these are the categories, and we can actually add any place. Okay, so you can how about we actually add those things into maybe beans. Okay, and close. Okay, so now when we actually see, when you actually move down right here, then you should actually see our beans on the beans here. So you can see we have these two beans. So now I can drag and drop this guy. Oops. Yeah, okay, so it's actually updating class path. Okay, so now I should be able to drag and drop this guy. So this is hello world bean. Okay, and we can change the background color, and we can change the value. So the value is a text. So we can, instead of hello world, I'm gonna change it to maybe JPassion, like this. And value is actually changed. Okay, so the reason UI tool can let you change the property values like this is because it does use what is called the introspection. Okay, so Java allows introspection, and introspection basically allows this UI tool or any other the classes to take a look at the contents of the object, in this case this bean, okay, and see what kind of the getter and setter methods are present. So if there are get color method, okay, or get text method, then it knows that it can read the values of it. That's the reason it was able to present it here. Now, if there is a setter method, it also knows it can change it. So by changing this one, it's underneath. It's actually calling set text method of this bean. Okay, so that's basically what we just did. Okay, so I did these things. Okay, and we can change the properties of the bean through the builder tool. So we change the color and text and things like that. Yeah, so that's basically what I just did. Okay, and then you can actually drag and drop the second bean, simple bean JLabel2. Okay, and so that's basically the end of the exercise. So basically the idea of this exercise is that the bean, if the bean happened to be visual bean, in this case that is the case because this bean is extending JLabel, you can actually have the UI builder tool to introspect the bean to find out what getter and setter method it has, and then it will let you in fact change the property values. Okay, all right, so I'm gonna actually give you guys so I talked about the concept of introspection a bit. Basically, whoever wants to use the bean can introspect, the target bean and finds out what properties it has and what method it has and things like that. So that's basically is what introspection is. So what is introspection again? Introspection is the process of analyzing a bean's design patterns to reveal beans' properties in events and methods. Okay? So this process controls the publishing and discovery of a bean operations and properties. So by using introspection, UI builder tool can figure out that a particular bean has in fact text property or color property and things like that. Okay. So there is a little bit of difference between introspection and reflection in Java, but for now you can think of those two are the same. Okay, where you name methods with a certain naming patterns, as we talked about, like a getter method and setter method, where this XXX is the name of the property. Okay, well, actually the name of the property is supposed to be the small letter, but the getter and setter method has to have a capital letter like this. Okay, so one of the mistake a typical Bean developer has is getter and setter method and not using this capital letter. Okay, so make sure that you're using capital letter for setter and getter for your property here, and then it figures out there is a property it can read if it finds a getter method, and if there is a setter method, and it will figure out it can change the value. Also it could actually find out whether there is some the event related things to be present on the bean or not by looking at if there are in fact any event listener add or remove listener like this, then it knows that this particular YYY is the name of the event. Yeah, so so I'm going to actually explain this event handler later on, okay, since we're going to actually spend quite a bit of time on that. So for now, let's focus on just getter and setter method. So the things that can be found through introspection include properties. So if there is a setter method like this, set and property name and property type and value, then it knows that there is a property called this property. And then if there is a get property name, then it will actually see, it knows that there is actually property, this one, that it can read. This is for Boolean property, and this is a simple property, and it could also actually detect the indexed property. Okay, so if there are in fact the array of properties, you could also have methods like this, and then those are considered as index properties. For now, let's focus on just a simple property like this. Okay, events. So events could be multicast events or unicast events. So I mean, you don't really have to worry about the differences between the two for now. Okay, so let's just focus on the just a single unicast event. Okay, so here if a bean has this add event listener type, okay, and remove event listener type, that means the bean can fire an event. So that means the bean is the event source. Okay, again, we're going to actually talk about this event later on in detail, so let's just move on. It can find out the methods as long as those methods are public method. It can find out. Okay, so all those methods. In fact, by looking at these methods, if they're in fact a getter method and setter method, then it will figure out there is a property. Okay. All right. So let's do introspection exercise. So this introspection is basically, we're going to actually call this introspector method. So you can see this introspector is a class, right? Okay, so this is the one of the class on the java.beans package, and it does have what is called the getBeansInfo static method, and then you can find the beaninfo. From the beaninfo object, you can find out all the you can actually display all the properties of the bean, okay, from the beaninfo object, and here you can display all the methods of the bean. Okay, so the actual the property descriptor and all that stuff is not that much important. Basically what you can do is that you can call the get property descriptors method of that beaninfo object, and then each of those things will be just kind of and we get the name of that property, and we just display. By the way, this is actually new syntax for for loop. Okay, so for loop that we learned yesterday was that we are using like I equal 1 and then I equals less than something and stuff like that. From Java SE5, in which we're going to actually learn the new for loop syntax later on. Basically, you provide the collection, and then you provide an item of that collection, and that item will be actually accessible like this. Okay, so we here basically we are displaying properties of the bean, and here we are displaying methods of the bean. Okay, so we get all the methods, the method descriptors, and then from the method descriptor, each of those method descriptor object, we can get the name of the method. Okay, and this is a simple bean. So this simple bean has two properties like name and size. Then we have a getter and setter method, right? Okay. So when you actually build the application, it figures out there are the fields of the bean is class, name, and size. Okay. Now the methods, it does have more than just three. So it does have the get name, get size, and set size, right? So it certainly has get size, set size, and get size, so get name. Okay, get name here, but it does have other things like equals, wait, and notify, and things like that, and toString. These are from object class. Okay, so in Java, every class is a child class of object class, right? So these are the properties. These are the methods from the object class itself, like a toString and the wait. There are in fact two versions of the wait and equals. These are from the object class. Okay, so I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to run this. So let's move on. Event model. So player's event model, JavaBeans event model, there is an event source. It's an object that generates events, or we call sometimes fire events. Okay, so event source bean is sometimes called event sender or event generator. So they are all same thing. Okay, button bean is a good example of event source, because when a button bean is clicked, that bean will actually fire an event. Now, what do you mean by fire an event? Yeah, it's basically in Java programming, fire an event is basically calling a method of event listener object. So that's basically what firing event means in Java programming model. Okay, so there is event source, and then there is event listener. So event listener is basically the one that provides the action. Okay, so it basically is an object or bean that is interested in receiving events. So basically it provides event listener object. So what it means is that when the event source is actually firing an event, it will actually call a method of event listener. Okay, so that's what it means as receiving event. Okay, so receiving event is basically a method of this event listener object gets called. Okay, so that's basically what event receiving events. So it's sometimes called event handler or event receiver. Okay, so it could be like a business logic bean. So when delete file button is clicked, event listener method is a method of event listener will be invoked to handle the whatever consequence of of deleting a file means. Okay, so it will actually it will not consequence, it actually perform the delete file, and then it will do whatever it has to do. Okay, so it could contain business logic that actually performs a file deleting, as well as whatever consequences it has to deal with. Okay, so two players, event source and event listener. Okay, now what is the relationship between event listener and event source? Meaning, how does event listener know? Let me actually repeat that question again. How does event listener let the event source know that it is an event listener of that particular event? Okay, so So that is basically the question on this page. How does event source know the event listener? So it took, basically you can rephrase the question. How does event listener let the event source know that event listener is the one that it wants to receive events? So the way the event listener knows, the way the event listener let the event source to know that it is an event listener is it register its interest of receiving events to the event source. So event listener has to perform some registration to the event source. Okay, so event source event source has to provide some kind of method for registration. Okay, so event source provides methods for event listeners to register and unregister. So event source is going to be internally maintaining all the event listeners who registered. Okay, so when an event occurs, in fact, it will basically invoke those event listeners. Okay, so what are the methods that event source has to provide for registration or unregistration? So as I said before, event source provides registration and unregistration method that are used by the event listener to register. So those have to be in the form of add XXX listener and remove XXX listener. And this XXX is basically an event, name of the event. Okay, so the introspection can actually find out if there are any method patterns like this, add XXX listener or remove XXX listener. If a bean has this kind of patterns of method, then introspection can figure out, this bean is in fact the event source. Okay? So suppose if you are writing a GUI application, you might in fact have a button object, and the button object should be event source, right? So button object should have add onClick listener and remove onClick listener method. Okay? So that this onClick is basically event, name of the event, and then it has the add onClick. So these add onClick listener method of that button bean will be used by the event listener so that it register its interest of getting event from the event source. Okay, yeah. So this is a little bit of complexity involved. Okay. So the way that you are going to write this custom event handler among beans is like this. First, you are going to write event class. So typically, you're going to name it as XXX event. Okay? Or you can actually use existing event class from JDK. So JDK provides like a button, JButton class, right? So JButton class, JButton class can handle like an action event. Okay, so this action event is already defined. It's one of the event class already provided in JDK. So you can actually use this existing event class, like action class. And then you're going to write event listener interface and implementation. So we haven't really talked about the interface and implementation. That's something that we are going to talk about. We're going to talk about tomorrow. Okay, so for now you can think of this interface and implementation. The combination of this is basically a class. Okay. So you are going to actually write XXX event listener interface and provides implementation class of it. Okay, so basically you're going to actually provide some implementation of the listener. Okay, and you can also actually use built-in event listener interface such as the action listener. Okay, and then you are going to write event source. So event source, as I said before, has to have registration and unregistration methods that are going to be used by the event listener to register, right? So it has to, you have to add XXX listener and remove XXX listener methods to your event source bean. Okay, and again, XXX stands for the name of the event. These add methods are used by event listeners for registration. And then you're going to write the glue class. This is basically for testing purpose. Okay, so register event listener to the event source by having the event listener to call add XXX listener of the event source. Okay, all right. So I know this is a little bit too complex. Okay, so that's fine. So we're gonna actually do hands-on lab, and I'll give you, enough time to play around it. Well, actually, we're gonna finish at 5, so I expect you guys probably have to do some work after today's code camp. So in this case, the sample application, hands-on lab application, what we are going to do is we have this button handler. So if you click this one, fire event, okay, and then basically we are gonna just display some message. This message is gonna be displayed from the event listener. Okay. So first, we are going to write event class. In this sample application, we are going to use action event class that is already provided in JDK. Okay. And then we are going to write event listener interface and implementation. So again, we are going to use existing interface called the action listener, which is already provided in JDK, as I said. And by the way, the interface and implementation, this is a very important concept. You can think of interface is a set of the functions, okay? And implementation is the actual bean or actual class that provides the actual code for those methods, okay? So for now, you can think of the writing action listener interface. It's just set of the methods. And again, action listener interface is already provided in JDK, and it has what is called the action performed method. Okay. And then you are going to implement this action listener interface. So in our button handler class, that's our custom class, and we are going to implement action performed method of this interface in providing actual code. Okay. And so this is the event listener class. So here we are button event handler implements action listener interface, and action listener interface has action performed method. So we are basically implementing it. So this is our custom logic. So in this case, we are basically the append this message to the text area. Okay, so that's why. And then we also actually specify the event. Okay, so the text area is this area. Okay, we are just basically adding this message. And then you are going to write event source class. So we are going to use a button class which already has which is already provided in JDK. Okay, so it does already have add action listener and remove action listener for registration. Okay. All right, now we are going to actually write the glue code in which we are going to create object instances of this event source and event listener, and then we are going to register event listener object to the event source using add the listener method. Okay, so this is the glue code. So here we create the JFrame. Okay, that is the frame that we have seen. So basically we are creating this frame. Okay, and then we create it. Then we are going to then we create the text area. So that is the text area that you have seen. Then we have a button. Okay, J button. And then for that button, we are going to so the button is the event source, right? Okay. So here we are adding event listener object. So you have to create event listener object. Okay, and then you are going to register this event listener object by calling add action listener method of the button. Okay, and then basically these are the UI stuff. Okay, so when button is clicked, this button event handlers method, this method action perform method will be invoked to handle it. Okay. Okay. Yeah, so I know it's a little bit too much to digest just by actually listening to me. So let's do the hands-on lab exercise. Okay, so exercise 1, the 4.1 is basically what I explained in my presentation. And this one, you're actually creating your own event source. Okay, so let's actually do this 4.1 first. Okay, so we are going to create the brand new project. Okay. And so let me actually do that. We are going to create a brand new project and Java application, and I'm going to name it as action event example. And for main method, I'm gonna just use this one as a main method, so we don't actually use any package, anything like that. Okay, like this. Okay, and then we are going to modify action event example the Java. So this is the glue code. Okay, so I'm gonna just copy this code. Okay, so here we basically create the JFrame text area and button, and then the button is the event source, right? So the button class. So if you take a look at the JButton Java documentation, there should be add action listener method. So let's take a look at that. The JButton and Java doc. So you have to select JButton here, and then Java doc. Then you should actually see add action listener method. Okay, so add action. Yeah, so this is a method, in fact, from the abstract button. Okay, so this is one of the method that is built in this JButton. Okay, so we should be able to call add action listener method of this button to register event listener. So we haven't created button event listener yet, right? So we have to create one. Okay, so that is the next step. So we are going to create button event listener Java. So we are going to create a brand new class. So in the same package, we are going to create a new Java class, and this is the button event listener. Okay, now button event listener is basically you can just copy this code, and I'm going to explain the code. Okay, so this is the code that we have already looked into from the slide. Okay, so only thing it has to do is to provide the action performed implementation. Okay, so we haven't again learned the interface. Interface means that the action listener has a setup, in this case only a single method called the action performed, and that action performed has to be implemented by the implementer of that interface. So in this case, it's basically implementing this action performed method. Okay, so here basically we are just displaying action occurred in the button handler from, I'm gonna just change it from sanction or something like that. Okay, and save the changes. Okay, and then we should be able to run the application. Okay, so let's run the application. So we get this one. So now if I call fire event, okay, then action performed method gets invoked, and it's basically displaying action occurred in button handler from sanction, and then it basically just display the event. The event is a type of the action event. Okay, all right. Okay, so I have just 14 minutes right now, so because this is a little bit complicated, I'm gonna actually let you guys to do this exercise for that one, and tomorrow I'm gonna explain for that two in a bit more detail. Okay, because I want to have some more time to explain step by step. Okay, all right. So let's see. I'm going to just